Welcome back, YouTube, to another episode of 10 with Travis, where we take just 10 minutes a day to dive deep into the Word so you can be more equipped today than you were yesterday. Today we're going to talk about the book of 1 Peter. So that's kind of going to be the direction we go to. We're going to talk about 1 and 2 Peter over the next few weeks. We just wrapped up Ephesians with Paul, and I hope that is something you really took revelation from and was blessed with, because I know for me, I learned an absolute ton from reading Galatians and then going into Ephesians, and it was just some revelations that I know we just need to have deep down in ourselves, that we can continue to have those live out in our lives each and every day. So we're going into 1 Peter, and the author of 1 Peter is, in fact, the Apostle Peter. He wrote the book around 60 AD, and he wrote it to a group of suffering Christians that have kind of been scattered and suffering in terms of persecution. So they've been having persecution, and because of that, they've been scattered. Verse 1 talks about the region or the area of where it is, and for us, in our geographical locations, it's actually modern day Turkey. So some of the themes in the book are hope and suffering, as well as our lifestyle pointing to God just by the way we lived. And that is a theme that we talked about a little bit in some previous episodes. Is yes, we have grace, so we don't have to worry about the do's and the don'ts. But Paul even talked about that even though you don't have to do something, or you're not judged according to something, those from the outside see and evaluate us and what it means to be a Christian, and if they want to become a Christian based off of what we do. So we need to be careful that yes, we have grace, but like Paul even said, that doesn't give us a license to sin. And Peter's going to piggyback off of this and talk about how the way we live under persecution or when we have opposition points people to God, which I think is very unique, because when things are going well, it's easy for us to act according, but when things aren't going well or there's opposition because of people treating us differently because we are Christians, the way you respond to that, I think, shows a lot about yourself and a lot about the Christian faith. So talking about persecution, Peter actually was martyred around 65 AD, so that's about 5 years after he wrote this book, and he was done so under the Roman Emperor of Nero. And as we read some of these verses and talk about some of these chapters, keep that in mind, because it's very interesting the way Peter's going to talk about submitting to government and honoring the king and the emperor, when in fact it's the same people that go ahead and put him to death later on. So it's a great example for us to be able to live our life out. So for me personally, again, I like to be transparent, and I hope you guys as well are in comments and emails. This was a little bit of a harder book for me to dig through. Galatians and Ephesians, it just talked about grace so much, and for me, over time, it's just been, it's easy to understand grace once you get the revelation, and then it kind of builds upon each other, and there's just so much positivity around grace as well. So we're moving into 1 Peter, where we're talking about, persecution and suffering, and I think for us here in America, it's a little distant for us, because we just live in a nation where we can believe what we want. We don't get persecuted for our Christian faith. We can see people around us and go to church and do all these things freely, and it kind of gives us a little bit harder, I think, picture of what people went through back then. The Christian faith was brand new with Christ dying. It's probably at this time maybe 25 years old or so. So it's just totally different, being 2,000 years old and 25 years old. So I think some applications for us, though, is I do think in our lives people treat us differently on occasion for being Christian, as well as I think it's hard to fit into the crowd. And I think that's just something that, as we have social media and we go to schools where we're around believers and non-believers, as kids, we really do want to belong and fit in, and God gives us the desire to belong and fit in. We just sometimes want to belong and fit in the wrong crowd, and then when we act or we say no to things that a crowd would do, we in a way do get persecuted because they don't want to hang out with us, they don't want to be our friends, they don't want to be around us. And again, that can be difficult, and I understand that is difficult for people. So I hope we can kind of learn some things from First Peter, which I know we will if we have the open ears and open hearts on how, yes, we don't necessarily get persecuted like then, but it is still a challenge to walk your daily Christian life, and there's convictions you have to stand on, and it does make it harder when people around you, people in the workplace, aren't necessarily Christians, or they don't like to talk about it, or they talk against it. So we will be able to pick up some good things here as we go through 1st and 2nd Peter, because when we get into 2nd Peter, it'll transition a little bit as well. So today was a little bit shorter than normal. Again, we just wanted to lay the foundation of what book we're going over, just a little bit of background information. So I encourage you, with a little bit of time that you would normally take watching this, go ahead and open your Bible. And most Bibles at the beginning, before the first chapter, have some sort of background information, introduction. Those are just so valuable to read because it just gives you a sense of context that you wouldn't necessarily have without reading that. And those are just a great resource to then understand what the verses are talking about, who it's talking to, why they're talking about it, all that type of stuff. So definitely go ahead and read that before we jump into the content tomorrow. So if this channel has blessed you, and especially the 10 with Travis, and you feel like you want to give to the network, please go ahead and do so. That information is below. Like always, if you have questions, comments, always shoot that over to us. I pray that you have a wonderful Monday and a great week. And tomorrow we'll jump into the content. So also be sure to read 1 Peter chapter 1 as we prepare for tomorrow.